Wolfram Alpha. I've heard a lot about it. I've checked it out, tried a few queries, but I don't know if I have the full vision, at least as much of a vision as you have or what you're trying to put forth with Wolfram Alpha. So could you please explain what it is?
Well, let me give it a try. Since I've been there for 10 days, I think I probably have a deep knowledge of it. But I think, really a way to think about Wolfram Alpha is if you think about Google and Bing as search engines, Wolfram Alpha is to a large extent a fact engine. The goal with Wolfram Alpha is to deliver to you answers to questions that are definitive. So, if you ask the question, how many calories in a banana, that's not a search result. There's a clear answer to that, and we should give you that answer, and we should give it to you right up front. If you ask the question, what's the distance between Jupiter and Mars, it's calculatable. We should be able to give that to you right away. And so what Wolfram Alpha does is trying to add to this great fabric we have in the web a new thread, and it's the thread of facts, the thread of known knowledge, and the thread of stuff that we can provide to you, and some of it. So the two things that Wolfram Alpha does beautifully is, one, it has an amazing inventory of the numbers and facts known in the world. And two, it's got an engine on top of that that allows it to make new calculated facts based on this information. So an example of this would be, if you ask the question, where is the International Space Station right now? Well, it's a factual question. But the reality is you need to know the orbit of the International Space Station, its speed, and calculate that and say, oh, we know, Chris, that the International Space Station is now above Texas, and here's a map of its orbit and where you could look for it at night. So that is, let's call it a new fact. It's not a new fact, but it's derived, and it's derived without you having to know anything about orbital math and physics and anything like that.
Thank goodness, because
Me too. And then we put on top of that this natural query recognizer, so you're able to come in and just ask a question that simple. And Wolfram Alpha currently covers a very broad range of topics and will continue to cover it. I think a lot of people, initially, Wolfram Alpha has been around for about 9 months, and it's been kind of, you couldn't get away with Wolfram Alpha Beta, but, it's effectively in its early stage where we wanted to get it out there and get people using it, so we understood, what people wanted and tested, and that's right. A beta or an alpha. It's Wolfram Alpha.
Well, that's my question is Alpha part of the brand, or is it Wolfram Alpha? Period?
It's the brand.
Okay.
Wolfram Alpha is the brand. And so it's not Wolfram Alpha.
Got it.
But we might, who knows?
Yeah.
So, as we move past this stage and we're starting to say, okay, now that we understand, and so in this beta period, a lot of the people who came in are people who knew Wolfram research from its background in physics and math, etc. So there's a lot of people who think of Wolfram Alpha as solely about math and about putting in formulas and getting answers to formulas. But it can be about financial comparisons. You can put in two stocks and see very interesting side-by-side comparisons and calculations of all sorts of predictions of where those stocks might go. If you put in a question like, what is the GDP of China versus the GDP of Japan, it gives you a side-by-side chart. That's not that fancy, but it's cool. If you put in what's the GDP of China divided by the GDP of Japan, suddenly it automatically creates an index. So you don't need to know much math to know that that's an index that compares the GDP of China with the GDP of Japan. It's a fun chart because, of course, you see it diverging greatly and converging greatly.
Where were you when I was actually in school?
We
did a while ago. Wolfram Alpha, not you physically.
Right. No, I know, but I think that's a good question because the net is clearly there is an application for Wolfram Alpha in the realm of education and in the realm of ebooks, and we're going to do a lot to be involved deeply in that. We already have a deep background in education. There's a realm, if you think about any specialty blog, if you think about a blog about sailing that would want, or surfing that would want tide charts, if you think about a blog about celebrities who would want to be able to put up, whenever they put up a celebrity's name, put up what the weather was like on the day they were born, or the day they died, if it was historical. All of this stuff you can get out of Wolfram Alpha. So we imagine an ecosystem that combines, the search engine, the search site itself, where we have the fact engine, where you can come as a destination site and get complex calculations or simple questions answered. And then all over the web through our APIs, through other things we're going to roll out, ways that you can integrate Wolfram Alpha into everything. And the goal is, if this is a collection of all the facts and knowledge, the facts of the world, then there should be a way that anybody who's interested in talking about facts or accessing facts can get to this and insert it into their place on the web.
My big question then is, if you're assembling these facts, who is giving you those facts? Where's your sources? How are they cited?
So they're all cited. If you go to Wolfram Alpha, at the bottom you can look at the citing, and they're often combined from multiple sources, and they're often compared with multiple sources to check, their efficacy. So if you're going to get gross domestic product as an example, gross domestic product is by its nature an estimate, and it's based on various formulas. So it's good to get multiple sources who calculate gross domestic product, possibly the country itself and the IMF as an example. Other things are much more readily accessible because there are arbiters of those facts. What was the stock price of Apple at the end of today is arbitrated. There's a fact out
Right.
there, and we can get that and collect it from one of the sources and deal with it. We don't have sports yet, but we will soon. What game did Willie Mantle hit his 50th home run in? That is a fact that is arbitrated. So I think there's a combination of stuff that we curate inside house by comparing different sources of that data, and other things where we can get very reliable sources and we cite them. And obviously there are clear sources for financial data, sports data, etc.
Well, it's no wonder why everybody has been talking about it, and I'm glad you've given your time to talk about it with me.
Thank you.